This is round 2 of 15 from the Rapid Championship. Carlsen has Black versus Gadir Guseinov, who opened with e4. See the French defense by Carlsen, the Tarrasch defense. And what's quite common out of this variation is for Black to be saddled with an isolated d-pawn. We do get to see that. First, taking on d4, the name of the game with this particular variation is to make sure you get castled soon, and so make sure we get these minor pieces out on the king side first. We'll worry about the queen bishop later. So bishop d6, followed by knight on g to e7. That was the only move. This knight is pinned. And in just this one move, Black is getting out of 2 pins. Knight b3, reinforcing that critical square d4, the one immediately in front of that isolated pawn. Make sure he's under control, and he is. Could be reinforced with c3. We'll see that later. The bishop is also ready to come out. Queen c7. Some pressure on h2. h3 is played. The bishop is kicked. The knight's ready to pick up this guy. And, well, it's not so important to take care of your bishops in this position. If you do give up the bishop, and we do see that in this game, make sure you have good homes for your knights. Well, you're going to have good homes for your knights, or at least one good home. The d4 square is one that white can rely upon. So he's very, very strong piece. And that could easily compensate for one side having the bishop pair or knight versus bishop situation. So after bishop takes knight, we have f takes g. And this opened up an interesting possibility for white. And it's one that white didn't go forward with, namely knight b5. In the game we saw bishop takes knight, but after knight b5, what would we have? What's going on here? Well, we have this fork for one thing. The knight could clearly be taken, but notice what new possibility is present. Queen takes on d5, but actually not just yet. Move order is very important in this case. If you take right away with check, there's queen f7. And if, let's say, queen takes queen, notice how the knight is there to recapture and get out of the line of fire. Bishop takes, the knight's there to recapture. So instead, after knight b5 takes, first you take on e5, and after it's recaptured, now you come down with check. You could pick up this bishop, but at the end of it, Black gets that material back and has pressure against f2. This could be defended, but still an interesting position. The valuation, as you can see on the right-hand side, is reading that white is still a little bit better here by a point. Interesting continuation, not something that was not something white went for. Maybe white simply didn't see it, or maybe assessed this position as not one that white really liked. So just going back here, instead of knight to b5, we had bishop takes, and now c3. So 2 bishops versus 2 knights, but again, white does have a very, very nice home on d4. So getting all pieces working, the rook involved now, and looking to get some break in. We have g4 happening, a check is thrown in, a pair of rooks comes off, and this king is now taking a hike. Since these squares are weakened over here, he's going to take a hike over here near the queen side where it's a little bit safer. And the bishops are now going to line up on these diagonals soon enough, but it's tough to break down. Again, this knight, he's been sitting there for a while, or at least one knight has been sitting there for, seems like forever, and they have very good support points, right? Both pawns are there to reinforce them, very well centralized, and it's tough to break down how do you really get at that king position. So bishop e5, Black does try something coming up soon. This was an interesting move, looking to... my first thought when I see a5 is to clamp down on this structure, to stop the b pawn from maybe moving, but there's an additional reason behind it, as we'll see. Queen a6, the queen is there to maybe enter on d3, and this new possibility is now present. Bishop f4, for if queen takes bishop, this is going to be lights out. After a check, queen blocks, another check. Goodbye, queen. So we wouldn't have that. Queen c2 instead, and this still remains balanced. Rooks are off, and how do you get rid of these knights? You can't really break it down any further. This is an attempt. Bishop f7 frees up this pawn to move. The knight is kicked, and now he gets rolling. But with these two pawns moving forward, what happens? Two things. One, this diagonal is opened up, and two, this rank is opened up. So who's going to take advantage of that? The white queen soon enough, giving check, and now sweeping into b5, looking at this d7 square. And this pawn gets marching, but he could really go no further. Check, king g8, another check, king h7, and that's how this game finishes, with a perpetual check. Right here, after this 51st move, king to h7, players agreed to a draw. Can you really try to get more? If bishop g7, no. Queen to h3, this pawn is going to be won. White is the side who's doing better. And what if you block with the bishop? Well, notice that your queen is now overloaded, having to watch over the bishop and pawn. This allows knight takes h4. Queen takes knight, queen takes bishop. So you really can't push the envelope too much. So I guess that's a reasonable result. Both players just agreeing to a draw at this point. So that's all for this video. Feel free to click the annotation link at the end of this video for round 3 of this tournament, or check in the video's description for links to the 14 other games.